As men, we're told to go out and take possession, but how can we do that if we're filled with doubt and fear? Stop for a second and listen. That doubt is exactly what God needs to build courage in you. In my conversation with Jake Giffen, you'll get a simple, practical plan to widen the decision gap, pre plan your response, and turn that fear into faith so you can actually take possession and go out and become the man that God has called you to be. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Valiant Forge podcast, where we help men overcome life's battles, show up better in the world, and become a valiant warrior for God. This is a place where we share practical strategies that will equip you on life's journey to help you become the man God has called you to be. Are you ready to overcome your doubt and fulfill your purpose just like Gideon? If so, let's go.
Jake, welcome to the podcast. I'm happy to have you on.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Valiant Forge representing here.
So tell us your story, how you came to starting a podcast and how you came on this mission to help men better themselves.
Well, I got saved in 94, and since then, I didn't grow up with a dad. I grew up with probably several male figures when I was super young. But, my dad left before I was born. He came back, I think, when I was 6 or 7, and then he died when I was 10.
Oh, man.
I think within a year after he died, my mom became a lesbian. So I didn't really have a male figure going through a lot of those formative years. Those years that I needed, I even felt like at the time that I needed, male figures around. So maybe it started then, and then you go through all the trials and tribulations of a young adult. I got saved when I was in 1994, and then at some point felt called to the ministry. I'll skip a lot of the details, but some point felt called to ministry. So I did some Bible college. I went to school of ministry at Calvary Chapel. Thought I was going to be a pastor for a while. That didn't work out. I ended up in the business world. And I think as time had gone on let's say since 2005 until now, I think my heart has just gradually evolved to seeing the need for men to have other men around who are strong, who have maybe been somewhere like you've been, like we were just talking about, some of your experiences and thinking, well, man, I'm not prepared for this. I'm not worthy of this, or, I'm not ready
Right.
for this, but men need to hear it. Like we need each other for our own growth. And for our own legacies. Like it's imperative that men come alongside other men. And I don't know exactly when it was painfully obvious to me. I think it just kind of evolved over time, where I was like, where's the need? Who can I minister to? Who can I serve? And that happened to be, well, men make the world go around. Businessmen, men in ministry, men who typically, well, if you look at the coaching industry now, let's say you did a Google search for personal coaches, it's all women. Like
Yep.
it's probably 90% women. And then so I asked at some point, and I asked myself probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I mean, why is that? And women are just better at talking about their feelings, and
Right.
women are better at admitting they need help, and women are better at a lot of that stuff. And that's kind of why I think over the years, they've started taking control of more things, and men, for some reason or another, maybe cultural programming, whatever it is, started taking a back seat to the women, which is, look, not making any judgments about it. I'm just saying that men, for lack of a better way of putting it, have decided to give up their authority, give up their
Take a
whatever,
back
and
seat. Yep.
they take a back seat. And when you look at the scope of how many men are looking for coaches versus how many women are looking for coaches, you go, oh, yeah, it's no wonder. I mean, we've all known guys who sit around and make excuses for the sin that they're in, or hang out with idle men, right? Paul tells us, hey, don't hang out with idle men. You got somebody who's making excuses, somebody who's not living the life, somebody who's not committed to Christ fully.
Yep.
You don't need to be hanging out with that dude. That dude's
Right.
he's an anchor around your leg. He's not gonna be good for you. So the more of that I saw, I think the more my heart kind of bled for them. And then I see that, a lot of guys have incorporated, sin into their spiritual walk and then start making excuses for it. And I started trying to figure out and study a little bit about why that happens, and perhaps if there's a way to reprogram some of those things, some of those behaviors. And so that got me started. I mean, that just got me started down that track. And I think when you see when you see a man change, when you see him take possession of the authority that is rightfully his as a son of God, there's probably no greater reward that you could have on this planet than from when he starts walking around with his head low, defeated,
Yep.
sad. And then, after a few weeks, you see his physiology change, you see his attitude change, you see that he's starting to take possession of what it means to be a godly man. And look, man, as soon as you start seeing that, it's a no-brainer. You don't really
Yep.
go back to, you don't really go back to doing just junk work.
I love that term, take possession. That's what God told the children of Israel to do when they
Hmm.
went into the promised land. He led them to it, but he wasn't just going to give it to them. They had to go and
Yeah.
take possession. That takes action.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, a lot of men think that they can just, a lot of people get saved and they're like, okay, God's going to fix everything.
Hmm.
God's going to help you fix everything. He's not going to fix it
Yeah.
for you. You got
Right.
to, James says, draw near to God and I'll draw near to you. You
Hmm.
have to take the first step. You have to take action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always cooperative, right? That's how it was always meant to be. Like God spent 5 days creating a habitat, right? With water and plants and sea animals and insects. And he made the habitat. And then on day 6, he created animals, and then he created man. And
Yep.
he gave it all to the man to manage, to operate, to dominate the animal kingdom, to subdue the land, and to multiply what God had given him. That's the he gives God gives us the resources. God gives us the call. God gives us the vision, whatever that Eden is. God gives that to us, and then it's our responsibility to lean into him and to operate and manage it the way that he would manage it himself.
Yeah, I know you have a framework based off of the 6 days in Genesis, right? In the creation.
Yeah, that the name of it is,
DSIX is your frame. Can you
yeah,
explain it a little bit?
D6 is basically represents day 6.
Okay.
It has two meanings really. There's 6 steps in the process. From the bottom up, it's a diagnostic tool to figure out what conditions we're creating in our life and how we're creating them. So that works out from the conditions you're creating, the conduct that's creating those conditions, what capabilities that you're imparting to those conditions. Some people, when whatever conduct you're doing in your life, those come from capabilities. And when you learn how to operate in a particular situation, you learn you learn a tool, a strategy. You learn how to make a decision, what is going to best work in a given situation. That's what capabilities are. And when your mind finds a way that works, this works well enough, then it creates the pattern. And then over time, the more times you encounter a particular situation, the more times you reinforce that pattern, the more ingrained it becomes, right? So it becomes like a habit. if you want to change what conditions you're creating in life, sometimes you have to change your behaviors. You have to change your
Right.
conduct. If you don't know what to do differently, that's where coaching, that's where a lot of things come in. We help you with the capabilities. We teach you a new way of conducting yourself in a specific situation so that you can get the better results. And then higher up, as you go higher up, you run into uh, code or beliefs, values. It's what I call code because I believe that we're all kind of
Yep.
running some kind of code, computer code, and I think of it as computer code. I'm kind of an AI geek, right? So I think of like, blockchain and AI and supercomputers and quantum stuff, and I think, well, the artificial intelligence, we are artificially intelligent, right? If God is the prime intelligence, all intelligence emanates from him, then we, by extension, are kind of artificially intelligent. We only have the intelligence God gives us, right?
Right. Right.
So I kind of play on that a little bit in the framework and call it code, your beliefs or your values. The top rung is your core. It is who you are or who you think you are, right? Who you believe yourself to be. So these are identity statements. I am a father. I am a businessman. I am, if you ask a Christian man, who are you? How often do you get the answer, I'm just a sinner saved by grace? And while that sounds nice, it's
Hmm.
not completely true,
Right.
and it's practically dangerous because to suggest that you are just one thing puts you in a box that only allows you to operate as that one thing. So if I see myself as just a sinner, then what I believe and my values are going to follow that identity.
Yep.
My capabilities then are going to follow that belief, and then my conduct is going to be that of a sinner.
Yep. And when you
Yeah,
said the word just, the
yeah,
scripture that came to mind is we are more than conquerors. You say
yes,
I'm just a sinner. You're not just. You're more than.
yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you have that identity that you are just that, then the conditions that you create in your life are going to be less than, let's say you take Galatians chapter 5, which I use a lot in my coaching and my content. To walk by the Spirit means that you are growing in love, joy, peace,
Peace,
patience,
patience,
kindness,
kindness,
gentleness, and
gentleness.
discipline, or
Yep.
self-control.
Right. Right.
Those are conditions you're creating. The opposite of those conditions, chaos, misery, sadness, fear, anxiety, if those are the conditions you're creating, then somewhere in your D6 diagnosis, we're going to find out that you're operating from the flesh, from the old pattern of life and not from the new way of life.
Hmm.
And if we track that back, we're going to find out that you think you're just a sinner. Well, if you believe you're just a sinner, then what we need to do is help you coach you through your identity, and then realign that so that it's more biblical. Above identity is proximity. It's the only one that doesn't start with a C. And proximity is your relationship to God. How close are you to God? How much are you working on that relationship? How much are you meditating on His word? How much are you relying on Him for guidance? And so from the bottom up, it's diagnostic. Kind of figure out what conditions we're creating, where the problem is revealing itself in your life, and then from the top down, it's a coaching model. So
Yeah.
I
So
hope that
what
makes
kind
sense.
of
And then
yeah.
day six, it
Go
just means day six. We were made on, that's the purest day that you could, you know, ever be born. It was day
yeah.
six before sin entered the world. That's the perfect man right there. That's the
Amen.
Christ figure.
Yeah. So what kind of transformations have you seen coming through your program? Do you have a particular story you'd like to share?
I mean, what we regularly get is just men who are really understanding that I'm not just a sinner, or I'm not just I'm not just a dad. I'm not just anything. I am a man made in the image of God, with a mandate to dominate and subdue and to multiply what he's given me. When you see the most changes, when you can align that identity and the conduct, and you create conditions that look like Christ would look if he did the same thing. And so love, joy, peace, patience. Do you have love in your life? Like, so I'm trying to think of an example. So a guy comes and he says, hey, I have challenge with this lady at work. She opens her mouth. I get irritated. I don't know what it is. She's annoying, right? She's utterly beyond frustratingly annoying at every time so the guy gets mad. So he's getting frustrated, angry with her every time she opens her mouth. So what condition is this causing? This condition is causing angst. It's causing him not to want to go to work. It's causing stress. It's causing a rift in his relationship with another human being who is a soul made in the image of God. He admittedly does not want that rift. He would love to have a good relationship with this woman where he can be a light that shines in a dark place, perhaps. And he certainly doesn't want to be constantly going to work in the conditions of angst and anxiety and chaos. So in working with him, we look at it and we go, well, if these are the conditions you're causing, what behaviors are you doing that's causing that? Well, I'm not doing anything. It's her, right? She's the one that's, her voice is the annoying one. I'm like, well, let's be honest, right? Her voice it's the way you're interacting with her voice. It's the presuppositions that you have, or your beliefs about her voice. Her tone reminds you of maybe a parent that was griping at you as a kid. That, something about her tone maybe is triggering some code that is igniting this conduct of angst or irritation, but it's not her, it's you. And as soon as he takes possession of the fact that it is him and not her, then we can start working on the capabilities of changing that. And when we work on the capabilities, this is, what do you think about, what do you see, hear, feel when you think about this woman when you pull up to work? Well, I think, oh no, I'm going to go in there and this is going to happen. And she's going to walk up to me and her voice is just going to, and he actually is rehearsing it. As he's telling me this, he's visually getting frustrated because he's living the situation in his mind, right? There's no reason for him to be irritated. She's not even here, right? But that's the power of the mind. And so instead of, now what we do in the capabilities, instead of you pulling up to the driveway and being irritated that you're already perceiving in your mind that she's going to have this conflict with you, instead of thinking about that, how would Jesus look at her? How would Jesus enter into that workplace? How would Jesus approach her when she starts talking? Mm-hmm. And we get people to think about what a loving master or loving person would, how he would interact with her. And as soon as we get into the mind of Christ, motivated by love, and see her as a soul, see her as somebody who is passionate about her work, we start changing his conduct, right? We start working at the underlying presuppositions that he has about this woman, and we start changing his conduct. Once his conduct changes and he starts greeting her with a little bit more, hey, what's up? Let's call her, I don't want to keep using Karen because I know a lot of great Karens, and they've gotten a bad rap because somebody.
For sure. My wife's name is Karen, by the way.
Yeah, there are a lot of great Karens, right? So give my regards to Karen, who somebody went ahead and messed up her name. So call her, Jasmine. All right. So,
that's a good name.
we're gonna talk to Jasmine. I forgot my point about that, but it's like, I got carried away with the Karen thing. I'm advocating for Karens in the world.
My wife will appreciate it.
When there is a presupp, when you associate negative feelings, negative behaviors about somebody to somebody,
Yeah.
It's very difficult to enter into a conversation with that person without immediately being irritated. So we changed some of that conduct, and now we're greeting. That's the point. We're greeting Jasmine instead of waiting, clenching, waiting for her to start speaking so I can be irritated. We're going to approach her like Jesus would approach her, greet her with a smile. We're going to do different things with her. And then when she starts talking, I'm going to hear her voice as God would hear her voice, like a loving person would
Right.
hear her voice. And we're going to take it from there. Now, sometimes that takes a lot of repetition sometimes, right? We got to work through that scenario over and over again. But what ends up happening is that once he's practiced it enough, he goes into work the next day to greet Jasmine, and instead of being on guard waiting for her voice to freak him out, he notices a very distinct dulling in that feeling that he gets because repetition in his mind, practice.
Yeah. Right.
So we gave him the capabilities that changed the conduct, that created better results for him at the workplace. And that relationship between him and Jasmine have improved over time because he started seeing her as a soul whom God loves instead of just some annoying woman at work who's, ragging at him about right? These are defining terms. She probably wasn't even ragging at him. He was perceiving this because of a tone that was probably embedded with him since he was a kid. I don't know if Karen's ever asked you to take out the trash or the garbage with a tone that is maybe less than, ideal. I've had my wife's asked me, on a couple of occasions over the last 30 years, can you at least take out the trash? Right?
Yeah.
Now, those aren't those aren't her finest moments.
Right.
But when you hear that tone and you hear those words, I only have one response to that, and that is absolute and utter irritation.
Right.
What do you mean by at least? And where's this tone coming from? Right?
Yeah.
She didn't mean anything. She was frustrated. She had her own baggage that she was carrying at the moment. Something happened at dropping the kid off at school or picking her up or whatever happened. She didn't mean it the way it came out. But the words and the tone she used ignited something in me.
Yeah.
And now I have a choice. I can lash out and be mad about it, which would be, let's say, some people's normal, natural, quick response. Like, what do you mean? Don't talk to me like that. And let the fight begin, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
We're off to the races, man. You talk to me like that, I talk to you like this, and now we're going to fight for the next hour or so, and it's going to end in some kind of, silent treatment for the next 2 days. And then I'm going to regret having and I'm going to, whatever.
Yep.
What's interesting, though, is if that is a habitual tone that she has, you can help her change that tone over time, but you're better served by changing the way you respond to that tone.
Yep.
And you can. It's not hard. It's just a reprogramming of the stimulus. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much I could blather on about it forever.
Yeah.
So
Do you use Proverbs a lot in your coaching?
I don't use Proverbs a lot. No, I use anywhere, the New Testament has a lot to say about the heart, the mind, consideration. I use Galatians a lot. I use Romans 5, 6, 7 a lot. I use James a lot.
Yeah, James. Well, James is the New Testament version of Proverbs.
Yeah, fair enough.
You were talking about self-control. I recently just did a video titled "If You Can Master This One Verse, You Can Master Many Areas of Your Life." And it was based off of Proverbs 26, I think it was. It's I don't remember the exact verse, but a man without self-control is like a city broken into without walls.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and self-control. Like you said it earlier, you have that moment to make when your wife says something to you in a tone that you don't like, or just adds that little word in there, you have that moment of decision.
Yeah.
And it's your whether you're gonna lose control or have self-control can make all the difference in how your night's gonna go.
Yep.
And it's all a decision.
Well, and what's interesting about that example too is that we can all we can all imagine that a situation like that. We've all kind of probably been in something like
Yeah,
that
I've been there.
where we are consciously making this decision. Like there's between the stimulus or the trigger and the response we give, there's a gap. It's typically called the response gap. And so when you have the stimulus response, it's typical psychology stuff, and then you have the response gap. If I don't control, let's say this is the first time my wife says this. She goes, "Can you at least take out the trash?" Now I'm shocked by her tone and the words. So I'm trying to process for the very first time, what is the right way to respond to this? Now now I decide that my response is going to be that of anger. What are you talking about, lady? Where is this tone coming from? I'll take out the trash when I'm ready to take out the trash and no sooner.
Mhm.
Ah, that felt good. I'm glad I got that off my chest. There's some reward that happens when you lash out in anger. There's a dopamine hit. There's, your flesh rewards you for it. The problem is, I think sin also notes that little moment. So the next time that tone comes, can you at least take out the trash? That gap, that decision gap gets shorter
Hmm.
because mentally you're creating a pattern. It's a pattern that works. Maybe the first time you said, "Hey, watch your tone. I don't like that." Maybe she said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I had a long day." Well, that felt pretty good. She said sorry for once. She never says sorry, right? That's a good enough reward to embed this pattern forever,
Yeah.
right? And if I
Yep.
can get her to say sorry. And so the next time she does it, that decision gap gets a little shorter and a little shorter. Now, fast forward 5 years, when now you've rehearsed this stimulus response regarding the trash 1,000 times, that decision gap is tight. It doesn't exist anymore. Will you at least take out the trash? F you, lady. I don't have to do anything you ask me to do.
Hmm.
Right? It just goes,
Yeah.
it fires. This is the challenge that I think men have, let's say, in a more serious level, have with, let's say, porn or addictions of any kind, is that they've reinforced this stimulus response so many times that the gap of response is tight.
Yeah.
They don't even think about not responding in a way that they normally do. So they see a pretty woman, immediately their body thinks it's going to get a reward.
Right.
It's Pavlov's dog. It rings a bell, it gets a treat. It starts salivating just by ringing the bell. The human body is conditioned that same way. And those things become the desires of our hearts. So if you cherish sin, let's say lust, for instance, James talks about, James says that you're tempted when you're lured and enticed by your desires.
Yep.
And so he uses fishing terms there, but it's basically when something gets your attention, when something associated with what you want gets your attention, and then you make the decision to take the bait. Then it gives birth to sin. And when sin grows up, it kills you. And so somebody who's struggling with lust, for instance, initially starts off with a long decision gap where he goes, "Oh, there's a pretty woman. I need to make the choice to bounce my eyes, think about something else, not look at her as not look at her as an object, but look at her as a soul of somebody that God loves, who is made in his image and who is worthy of dignity, not as somebody that I can pleasure myself to because she's pretty."
Right.
That's wrong. But if what you really want is that satisfaction, then that lure is going to be tied to that. So James uses lure and bait. That's the same in psychology as we use triggers or stimulus.
Hmm.
Does that
So
make
how
sense?
do we, yeah, how do we make that gap go back out? Is there a way of doing that?
Yeah, yeah, it's deliberate. So what you'd rather not do is relive the sin in your mind, right? So let's say let's talk about the trash thing again. If I've reacted or responded so many ways to that trash tone, that tone that she gets when she asks me to take out the trash, that now it's immediate and I need to build in a new gap so that I can make space to change it,
Yeah,
then the way to do that is to preemptively think about the next time she has that tone, the next time she tells me to take out the trash, how would I rather respond? Because you're not going to create a new pattern in the moment. You're going to create a new pattern before the moment happens.
hmm.
You're going to plan the new pattern. And then you're going to associate that new pattern in your mind with that tone. So when you say, okay, next time she says, can you at least take out the trash? I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to ask myself, does she really mean it the way she says it? And
Right.
how would I rather respond? Well, I think what I'll do is I'll take it and then I'll say, oh, yeah, no problem, babe. I'll take it out right now. And so if you run that pattern preemptively in your head a half a dozen times, next time she says, well, can you at least take out the trash? You're going to go, yeah, absolutely. I'll take it out right now.
Yeah,
And in doing that, you're going to create a new condition with your wife. She's going to be like, oh, that was interesting. We normally fight because that's the pattern we've created. We
yeah,
normally fight, and now he's taking out the trash. Who knows? She may even apologize for the tone when you get back. I don't know. You know.
does that preemptive planning sometimes turn into changing of habits? So back to the trash thing,
Mhm.
you're thinking about this is how I'm going to respond the next time that happens, but instead you start thinking, well, I'll just take the trash out before she even asks me. Then I don't even get approached with that scenario.
Good point. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, because you can, if in regards to the trash, I mean, you can identify after 100 times that she clearly wants the trash taken out when it's three-quarters full and not all the way to the top or whatever her
right,
desire
yeah,
is. Sure. Yeah. And then you go, oh,
yeah,
I know it's the trash. It needs to be, just take it out. Yeah, you
yeah,
can anything you want to do pattern wise. If you have an opportunity to program that yourself.
yeah,
When A happens, I will respond with B.
right,
And you can do that that's already happening to us, Mark. You know, when we're growing up and we encounter situations for the first time, a stranger yells at us for crossing the street, against a red light or something. Well, I've never experienced that before. I've never had an adult yell at me. How do I make sense of this?
right,
As soon as I decide how to make sense of it, and I decide that the way I'm going to do it is to shout at that old lady, call her names, and back her off. As soon as she backs off, I get rewarded with dopamine or some other chemical that reinforces that behavior. Now I know what's going to happen next time some old lady tries to yell at me about the street. I know what works.
hmm,
And as soon as I know what works, sin capitalizes on it and then over time addicts you to that pattern so that you don't look for any other pattern.
yeah,
But as soon as you start looking for another pattern that works, a more productive pattern, a pattern that gets better results,
yeah,
then you can change it.
yeah. Patterns. That's something I learned 5 or 6 years ago, and I recently just talked about this on not on my podcast, but on YouTube. I had struggled with porn for a long time.
Mhm.
And what I learned and the way to get away from it,
Mhm.
you had to change your patterns.
Hmm.
Like every time I was home alone at this certain point of day, I would have that thought, oh, let's just go take care of whatever, you know.
Yep.
So I had to stop putting myself in that place where I was at that point to break the habit. And I
Yep.
had said on the video the other day, like I still get tempted once in a
Mhm.
while, but it's a lot easier to just say, no, I'm not going back down that path.
Yeah.
So
Because the
you were
challenge is if you
talking
go,
about, yeah, yeah, you were talking about that gap being widened.
Mhm. Yep.
So even after 6 years now, that temptation still comes up.
Hmm.
And I've heard about people who, have broken habits for many years and then they all of a sudden relapse. So
Hmm.
what causes the relapse?
Well, what causes the relapse is you probably had that pattern for a long time. And those, they say it was the phrase neurons that fire together, wire together.
Yeah,
It's wired, right there. You have neurological connections that are already connected. And the more that you gave into that temptation for as long as you did, the stronger those connections got. Now you manage to dull down those connections by having self-control and kind of alleviating them. But if you were to give into that temptation, all those neurons wake right
just
back up.
reconnect. Yeah.
Yeah, they're already connected. They're just I in the termite business, or in wood destroying organism business, we talk a lot about fungus or wood rot fungus. Um, Fungus survives off of water, right? So it needs a lot of water and it'll keep growing and growing and growing. And it'll consume the fibers of the lumber. Now, the way to stop it from growing is to suffocate the water source, but it never dies. It comes back alive and it goes right back to work as soon as you introduce water to it again.
Hmm.
And that in a similar way is like sin. Sin, you can starve it. And some sins you have to really work hard at starving it. Sexual addiction is one of those because sexual addiction has a lot of inroads. It's audible, it's visual, it's kinesthetic. It's people do it when they're stressed, when they're tired, when they're alone, during certain times of day. There's so many different triggers, lures that sin uses to addict you to that's why I think that's why sexual sin is so prevalent is because it has so many different triggers. Now you can suffocate the sin like you've done. Congratulations on that though, bro. That is phenomenal. To be able to set that aside and to overcome it and to even have the desire to overcome it because there's a lot of guys who struggle with that who have given up the fight. They don't even fight it anymore. They're like, "Yep, this is who I am. This is what I do." And so for you to suffocate it like that and build in new patterns, that's great. But those are still alive. So
Yeah.
as soon as you give in, if you ever gave into it again, and that should be because you know the grip that it had on you for so long. I would imagine that the thought of relapsing at this point should terrify you so
Oh,
badly.
it does. And in many ways, because there's a lot of deeper reasons.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is part, I don't know a lot about psychology, but the pain that I saw on my wife's face when I had to
Mhm.
confess this to her, I don't want her I don't want to have to go through that again.
Yeah.
The hurt that I've caused just myself and other people, that helps me to like not go back to that because every time I get that temptation, it's like no, not going back down that road because that almost destroyed your marriage. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So
It is sin is bent on killing you, killing me, killing it. Sin is, when you read Romans 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, I mean, you get the idea that,
yeah,
sin is there to destroy. It's Paul uses coveting as his example, right? He goes, look, I was alive apart from the law, but when the law came, sin came alive and I died. I didn't even know what coveting was until the law said not to covet. And then sin, taking an opportunity through the commandment, aroused in me coveting of every kind, right? And so, so what you get from that is that sin is rebellious. Your flesh is rebellious.
Right.
If you make a law about something you should or shouldn't do, it's going to want to
You're
rebel.
right.
But what's key here is that sin is such that it can recognize opportunities and it can seize upon them. Right? It's not just something we do. It is something we do. It is something that we have in our flesh, but it is also a devious master or a wannabe master that wants to confine us into a prison where it tries to kill us. Like it is hunting us. It wants us dead. It wants us separated from God. Sin is devious,
Yep.
deceptive in all of its ways, and it can recognize opportunities and seize upon them. And the more you put it in its place, the more you put it in the place that Christ put it in. We're no longer slaves to it. We're no longer
Right.
bound to it. We don't owe it anything. And so when we put it in its place, like you did with lust, that says something. That says, look, the opportunity is not there for you anymore. But if you were to be tempted with that again, you know deep down that sin is there waiting to addict you to it again. And you
Yeah.
just don't, sin is evil, man. We don't think about it we don't think about it in terms like it's hunting us and wants us dead. But it's constantly working at exploiting weaknesses, at identifying where we're willing to give in, and constantly adjusting things so that we die without having any effect in the world.
Yeah. Man, this is such a great conversation. I feel like I've been coached.
This is, sin is if you ever want to know, it's like if we've all been at places in our lives where we're not living the life that we know we should have in Christ.
Right.
The peace, the patience, the kindness, the discipline, the self-control. And when you taste it, you go, oh my gosh, how do I get more of that? Well, you put sin to death more. And to do that, you have to, what Romans 12 tells us is to renew. We're going to be transformed
Renew
by
our
the
minds.
renewing of
Yep.
our mind. And so how do you renew your mind? You take thoughts captive to the love of Christ. You recognize where sin is trying to exploit you, and you change how you respond to it. And it takes a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work guys don't want to do.
Amen.
They'd rather play the victim and be like, oh, yeah, I'm just a sinner.
Yep.
Put me in the box. Woe is me. I'll never be perfect until I get to heaven, right? And you go, yeah, man, I can't hang out with you anymore until you change your thinking.
Right.
I can't have that. I can't have that kind of mind virus, man. Kind of like come like impeding
Yeah,
on my space,
for sure.
you know.
I love what you do. I love the things that you talk about. I've heard you say, I've built with a limp, I've led through failure. I've had to
Mhm.
repent of building my own kingdom instead of God's.
Mhm.
So what does it look like for a man to lead while admitting his limp and his own failures?
Well, I think that is in itself leading, right? There's no glory in pretending we're perfect. In fact, I just did a podcast episode earlier with my pastor who's really great at that. And we had the conversation about the same thing, which is if you want to be a good leader, it's not about pretending like you have it all together. It's not pretending like you have all the answers because you don't.
Right.
And it's not, pretending like you're perfect because you aren't. It's about leading from a place of going, hey, I only have what I have because Christ has given it to me. I am completely and utterly dependent on what God has provided, and I am broken just like everybody else. Now we're all broken together, but we're not committed to staying broken. And I think that's where that comes from, is leading. You can lead through the limp. You just have to not stop pretending that you're limping.
Amen. So every podcast that I do before I end, I ask every man that comes on this question.
Mm.
It's the cave of Adullam question. So David, in 1 Samuel, he was in the cave of Adullam. The men in the kingdom were discouraged, disgruntled. Saul was chasing them, and Saul was not paying attention. Saul was not being a leader of his kingdom. These men came to David. David said something to them in that cave that later they ended up becoming David's mighty men.
Mm-hmm.
So modern day scenario, you got a bunch of men in front of you who are disgruntled, disheartened, discouraged, don't know what to do next. What would you say to them?
Man, that's a good question. I would say that the sacrifice is worth it. I think. I would say that the sacrifice is worth it. We're holding on to sin. We're holding on to bad patterns. We're holding on to things because there's a fear of there's somewhat a fear of getting rid of it and delaying the gratification of the rewards we get in the kingdom. But Jesus promises us glory. He promises us a kingdom. He promises us a lot of things. And the sacrifice of that sin today is worth it.
Amen. Awesome answer. Jake, where can guys connect with you?
Pretty much all social media at the Jake Giffen, and then
Okay.
at jakegiffen.com.
And your podcast is the Jake Giffen Show?
The Jake Giffen podcast. Yeah, that's kind of heard everywhere, and then on YouTube at the Jake Giffen.
Awesome. And it'll all be linked in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate all your insight and your help for men. Let's keep pushing together to make men better.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you too. God bless you.
You too.
You are not defined by your past. Take one small intentional step and let your life be defined by your identity in Christ with your next right move. Starve the pattern, pre-plan your response, practice the pause, and celebrate the small wins. Be honest, lean on Christ, and keep moving forward. If this episode encouraged you and you think someone else can use it, then share it to them. And if you're listening on whatever platform and you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the podcast, the YouTube channel, whatever channel you're listening on, and let me know in the comments below what you thought of the episode and how you deal with disruptive patterns and how you are overcoming it and how you are going to go out and take possession of the land. Stay strong, stay valiant, keep forging your path, and be blessed.